Okay, we are on page 8 of our notes packet, our green notes packet. So I'll give you a second to get that out. Page 8. Okay, so page 8, we're going to go through and work through our two-step equations. So when we start getting more difficult equations, we're actually going to follow the order of operations. We're going to follow it backwards. So anytime you have a two-step equation, what you're normally going to see for the two steps is either going to be a multiplication or a division over here, and then an addition and a subtraction. So which one do I do first? Well, it's actually going to be the opposite of our order of operations. So what we're going to do here is we're going to undo my hand. We're going to undo addition and subtraction first. Then we're going to undo or get rid of that multiplication division piece. Okay, so the first thing I see is I see that I have a -7, that's subtraction, and I have a times 3. So I'm going to undo the multiplication or subtraction, or sorry, the addition or subtraction first. So how do I get rid of this -7? Okay, you may have done this when you took 7th grade, 8th grade, or pre-algebra, where you put a line down the equal sign so that you know for sure that you're doing the same thing on both sides. You're more than welcome to do that, but hopefully you can kind of let go of that as we keep going. So the opposite of -7 is going to be a +7 on both sides. Okay, so that cancels out on the left. And now bring down what you still have. What I still have on this left side is I still have a 3x. I still have an equal sign here. And then I'm going to take 10 and I'm going to add 7 to it. So 10 plus 7 is 17. Okay, then I'm going to undo this multiplication. So when we're undoing multiplication, we're going to divide by 3 on both sides. I'd like you to write your division like this as a fraction. We'll talk about that when you get your assessments back from your translating standard, but we definitely want to start writing our division as fractions, not with this division symbol anymore. We want to write them as fractions. So I want to see it written like this. The 3's over here cancel out. I still have my x. And 17 doesn't divide by 3. If you take that in your calculator, it does not divide. So if it doesn't divide out to a nice pretty number, you can just leave it as the fraction 17 over 3. That's a number and that's an answer. I would rather have 17 over 3 than have 15 and 2/3, or sorry, 5 and 2/3, which is what it would be as a mixed number, or a decimal. We definitely don't want decimals. So that 17 over 3 is perfectly acceptable. You don't have to get pretty numbers, and you certainly don't have to change them into a decimal unless it comes out really nice. This one doesn't. All right, let's try that process again. So our final answer is 17 over 3. We'll try that process again, but we're going to check our answers today too. So I'm going to grab a different color pen. I'm going to show you how to check this in your calculator. So here's what we're going to do. Take your calculator, we're going to plug our answer where it says x. So this is why we did our evaluating standard, so that we knew how to plug numbers in so that we could check our equations. So 3 times, okay, parenthesis. Now I'm going to put that in parenthesis. So if you do a parenthesis, you actually don't need to put the times into the calculator, but you can always add that. Now 17 over 3 is 17 divided by 3 in the calculator. So hit the divide button and then hit -7 in your calculator. Now what you should see is the equals part. So once you hit enter in your calculator, you should get 10. That's what you should see in your calculator. And that's what we have on this right-hand side. We have 10. So that checks out. Okay, so the checking process should not be super difficult, especially because you're just going to grab a calculator and you're going to type it in and make sure that you got the right answer. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the next one. We're going to do our addition subtraction piece first. Okay, so that's this piece. So we're going to undo this, and you can draw your line again so that you're making sure that you're doing it to both sides, which is only going to get a little bit more complicated in a few more steps. So tomorrow and the day after, we'll add some steps. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5 from both sides. The 5's cancel. I still have x divided by 2 equals 11 minus 5 is 6. And now I'll get rid of the divide by 2. So the opposite of divide by 2 is I'll multiply both sides by 2. So the 2's cancel out. Remember we talked about yesterday, when you do the times 2, make sure you don't accidentally write 2x. It's not 2x. That 2's sole purpose is to cancel itself out on that same side. And then 6 times 2 is 12. Okay. So if you feel comfortable with this, skip over. We've got some special cases in the middle, C and D. Okay, so skip over those. We got some special cases there in the middle. And then we've got 2 problems down here on the bottom. If you feel comfortable with what we just talked about, go ahead and try this letter E. And we can pause the video while you try that letter E. Okay, so hopefully you've already tried this letter E. And when you did the problem, hopefully you undid this plus 13 first. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 13. Notice I'm doing the number that doesn't have the x on it, right? That's another way to know what number you're supposed to deal with first, is I'm undoing the number that does not have the x on it, because that's a multiplication or division. When we did this letter B above, that had the x there. So I'm going to subtract that 13 from both sides. That's 55 on that side. Over here is a negative 5x. We talked about this yesterday, but we're going to keep reiterating it. When you do your division or when you do your multiplication, if the number is negative, it has to stay negative, okay? Because we want to make sure that the negative and the 5 cancel out, not just the 5. So when I divide both sides here by a negative 5, okay, type that into our calculator. X equals negative 11. Okay, and when you grab your calculator to type this back in, don't forget to put in the negative sign for the 11. Okay, so it's going to look like this. I've got a negative 5, And I'm going to multiply that. So I'm going to put that number in. I'm going to multiply that by my negative 11 that I just got. And then I'm going to put plus 13. And when I hit the enter sign or the equal sign, I should get on my screen a 68. Okay, so when I plug that back in, I should see 68. And if you're not seeing 68, if you're seeing negative 68, then you've got the wrong answer. Or if you're seeing another number besides 68. So again, what I did there is I took my answer and I replaced it into that letter X. So I've got negative 5 and I put in my answer for X. I hit enter, and what I'm looking for on the other side is I'm looking to see the number 68. Okay, when I hit enter, I did get 68, so it worked out. Okay, and again, we're working on these skills at a more basic level here because it's going to get harder as we go on through the week. Okay, let's try this next one. This next one messes you up just a little bit because it switches around where the X is. The X is no longer in front. The X is the second number instead of the first number. Okay, so when we get rid of our addition subtraction piece, what we're trying to get rid of is this number here. So the number that doesn't have the X on it. Okay, so how do I get rid of a negative 8 or a minus 8? So that's a minus 8. So I'm going to add 8. Add 8 to both sides. That's 74 on this side. My 8's cancel out. Bring down my 4x. And now I'm ready to divide. 74 divided by 4 is 18.5. Okay. We're going to just check and see that that's right, because sometimes when you get decimals or when you get fractions, you're unsure, like, ooh, that's a decimal or that's a fraction. I'm not supposed to get fractions or decimals when I do math. Actually, it's okay, but you can always check to make sure that your answers are okay by plugging it back in. I'm going to put that 18.5 in next to my letter 4, or my number 4. And I'm trying to get 66 when I put that into my calculator. So we'll go negative 8 plus 4 times 18.5. And when you hit enter, you're looking to get the number 66, which I did in my calculator. Okay. Now let's talk about these special case problems here that are up at the top. So I wanted to do F first because this problem kind of leads into problem C. So see how we got rid of this negative 8 by doing plus 8. We're going to do something very similar to that on problem C. So on problem C, we're going to get rid of the number that's not with X. Okay, so there actually is a number with X. So if you need to sneak a 1 in front of that X, there is a number there. So it's a negative 1. So we're not worrying about that number yet. We're worrying about this number. Okay, and that is a plus 11. That is a positive 11. So to get rid of a positive 11, I'm going to have to subtract 11 from this side. And this is where you have to start being really careful with your signs. So my 11s cancel out. Here's the first sign you have to be careful with. When you bring this down, it is a negative 1x. That's the first sign you have to be careful of. And the second sign you have to be careful of is when I take negative 14 and I subtract 11, that doesn't give me 3. Okay, so make sure that you type it into your calculator if you don't know the answer, or that you take your time, because otherwise your answer is not going to come out right. So negative 25 is what I get when I subtract 11 from negative 14. And then this is still multiplication. We slid that 1 in there, so we would be able to see that it's negative 1 times x. And if you drop that negative, you're going to forget your second step. So my last step, or my second step, is I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. So x equals negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, and if you plug that back in, I have 11 minus, and you can put the 1 here if you want, but you don't have to. So you can put that 1 in there before you put your parentheses 25, or you cannot. It's fine. That 1 doesn't have to be there. So if I put it there, or if I don't put it there, I end up getting the same answer. So I'm still looking for this number, this negative 14, in my calculator when I'm checking my answer, and that did work out. Okay. Okay, we're going to work just on those problems today. We'll save this one. This problem leads into actually what we're doing next. So we're going to just hang out right there, leave that set of problems for later. And what you should have is you should have that worksheet from yesterday. That has the one-step equations on it. So your homework yesterday was 1 through 8. You should have been able to get questions 1 through 8. And now in class, right now, you're going to work on the questions 1 through 14. Okay, so you're going to work on the questions 9 through 14 on this worksheet. And then it kind of gives you a little bit more complicated ones with 15 through the end. Okay, so in class right now, you're going to start on question 9, finish through 15, and then you're going to turn to the maze. Okay, and you can start working on these maze problems as well. Okay, and we'll fill in some of the gaps for sure. If there are some problems that you don't know how to do, that's fine. So you start here on the maze. So make sure you grab out this homework assignment. You're going to start here on the maze. If you need to pause to get out your assignment, you can do that. But you start at this box here on the maze, and you're going to do this first problem. Okay. So hopefully there's enough room for you, but I'll get rid of my plus 10 first. By doing minus 10. Bring down my 4x. Negative 26 minus 10. When you type that into your calculator, negative and a negative gives you more negatives, so that's actually a negative 36. Okay, so especially if you're not great with negatives, it's okay. Just make sure you use a calculator. And then I'm going to divide that by 4. So negative 36 divided by 4. If you don't put the negative in front of your answer of 9, do you see that those answers are both there, but only one of them is correct? So negative 9 is the correct answer. And then you follow that answer to the next problem. Okay, so you actually don't have to do this problem yet. You don't have to do this problem yet. And if you want to just do all of the problems on the worksheet, you can, but that's kind of how the maze works. What we're going to do tomorrow is we'll take questions on this maze, And we'll also make sure to take questions on the 1 through 15, because we should be able to get 1 through 15 as well. We already did 1 through 8, add through 15. So those are the two things in class. Make sure you have questions 1 through 15 done on this page, 1 through 15, and then work on any questions on the maze that you feel like you're comfortable with to get just a little bit more practice.